name is Stella and I'm doing UX at CERN, and I'm very excited to be here because a few years back I was also studying interaction design in a similar university, in University Paris. And now it's very interesting to see what I learned to be in practice at CERN. So a few words about me before. As Gabriela said, I have an IT background, but I was always more interested in communication, psychology, getting user needs. So then I followed the master's, and after an internship at CERN and then a graduate program, I'm now at community engagement, which in CERN language means getting user requirements. And I'm also manage a project at CERN. So how many of you have visited CERN? Not so many. So CERN is based in Geneva, and what you see here is the Large Hadron Collider. It's 27 kilometers underground, it's 100 meters underground, and it's both in France and in Switzerland. And CERN is the European Center for Nuclear Research, and it's also the coolest place in the universe. Not only because we discovered the Higgs boson, also known as God's particle, in 2012, but also because actually in the Large Hadron Collider you can see the coldest temperature ever reduced, or even colder than outside space. And what you might also know is that CERN is the birthplace of World Wide Web, but what you might not know is that this is the first picture uploaded online of a band. So the person who was developing the web, Tim Berners-Lee, uploaded this picture to test the system, and the rest is history. So if you are interested in visiting CERN, you can go online. It's free to visit for everyone, and you can also visit the underground in September.
So you can see the...
Yeah, you can see this picture. And live there. Actually, people are taking bikes because it's 27 kilometers long, so you can travel by bike. So CERN is a very cool place to work, and you would imagine if our detector looks like this, how do you think our interfaces look like? Like this. You're not too impressed, are you? So you can see same images for different functionalities, lots of menus, lots of lists, one on top of the other, very 90s interfaces in general. So CERN is very slow to adapt UX, but there are very good reasons why is that. CERN was founded back in 1954. So it's a quite old organization and slow to move in general. We have around 10,000 employees and also 10,000 visitor scientists. That means there are lots of people, and at the same time we are building decisions based on consensus. So that means that decisions are taking more to be taken. Also, our user community are physicists, and that means that there are people who are very they can program, they are very technically advanced. That means that they don't prefer fancy interfaces, and they prefer command lines, for example. That's a problem because they see UX as just a fancy design and fancy colors on top of what it looks like, and it's hard for us to show why UX is important and how we can make their life more productive. However, in the recent years we have seen a lot of improvements. For example, one is the fact that we have now a collaborative space next to CERN. It's called the Idea Square, and it has a bus, for example, with double decks where people have meetings. In general, it's a very nice atmosphere, collaborative and design thinking ambience. So I want to talk more concretely about my project. It's called Inspire, and it's a digital library for physicists. So this is the interface currently, and it looks quite 90s, right? that's because it is. So in the late 60s, it was basically the Google for physicists, looking for particle physics literature. And in 1991, it became the first website in North America. What people can do there is they can look for papers, they can look for jobs, they have an author profile. It's like LinkedIn for physicists, basically. So what we are doing right now is we are rebuilding the platform. We are rewriting everything from scratch, and so that we make a modern interface. So who is familiar with the waterfall approach of developing stuff? So it's the typical approach of getting the requirements, design something, implement it, and then that's it, deliver it. So this is the approach we started in the beginning. We hired one intern for 1 year to develop a specific project. We gave them a massive specification document with all requirements up front, and so that this intern creates a monolith. So guess what happened? This was one big mistake. Thing is that if that's the value, and that's the time, all the value of the project is delivered in the end. That means that the risk of failure is very high. And in our case, for example, we had to sometimes rewrite everything from scratch because what was developed in the end wasn't what we needed. Truth is that in real life is very different than the ideal world. So in real life, people get sick or they take holidays and the final delivery date is delayed. Requirements are vague and sometimes they need to be clarified from in the middle of the project. We find things that need to be changed and need to be reused, so the scope of our projects changes. Budget has to be increased because we didn't plan it well. There's lots of schedule pressure, so the quality slips sometimes. So we realized that we needed to change something, and we decided to do something else. We came across this very interesting graph. Here we see the requirements. So in this bit, we see that if requirements are very well known and are stable, and in the other bit is if the requirements are constantly changing. Then on the technology part, here is if the team knows a lot about the technology and we are certain what technology we use, and the other part is that we are not sure and it's not clear which technology. So the waterfall part is very much useful when you know exactly the requirements and you know the technology that you are using. However, in our case, we weren't so sure about the technology that we'll be using, and also the requirements were changing. So we decided to follow an agile process. Now, how many of you have heard of agile? A lot. And how many have actually worked on agile?
This morning.
So agile is a time-boxed iterative approach that builds software incrementally. It gives us the ability to change direction with little impact based on newly discovered information, which happens all the time in software development. What are the benefits? If in waterfall we have the full value delivered only in the end, what happens with agile is that we build something incrementally, thus we have incremental value, and at the same time when we deliver something small, we learn from it, so the risk of failure is decreased. Now, how many of you have heard of Scrum? And are the same people have also used it in real life or not? Who has used it? Only 2 people. Okay. So I'll explain very briefly what it is, and then I'll show you how we use it at CERN. So if we have a project, then we can divide the project into tasks and subtasks. And if we have a timeline, then we divide the timeline into small sprints, like 2-week sprints. And we put stuff from the subtext into the sprint. Now, every day we meet with the team and we discuss what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, and if there are any blockers. And in the end of the 2-week period, then we're doing a sprint review where we present what was done. And also, another part I very much like is we're doing the sprint retrospective, where we evaluated how we worked during the previous sprint, and then we decide what to improve. So I like very much this part because the team is always constantly improving, and we're constantly doing like a group psychotherapy where we said what we didn't like from the previous sprint or we liked, and we keep continuing doing it.
So what are you doing in the sprint review?
You show what you have been doing.
Ah, okay.
Here is about doing a demo of what you did, and in the retrospective you talk more about how you did it and about things that the team worked on in general. So in order to be trained for that, we did a 2-day workshop where we had to do sprints from Legos. So our task was to build this city out of Legos. And it was a very interesting experience because you realize that the problems that you see during building Legos are exactly the same things that happened in real life. So I highly recommend if you want to start using Scrum in a team, to start with a workshop with Legos. So let's see the benefits of Agile in general. First of all, we keep developers happy. That's because we develop a smaller part of the code, so developers are focused on the code. Then it gives them empower to discuss the technical solution and decide. And also meeting daily and also with the sprint review, they see that their work is valued and is visible to the others. And at the same time, we also make users happy. That's because every 2 weeks we show them what we have been doing. There is flexibility, they can change their requirements, and in general there is faster communication. So I was driving this change for my team. And I was thinking that Agile is the magic cure. After all, we've seen the benefits, and looks like Agile is going to save all our problems. So I was very enthusiastic. I also discussed with other teams, and they were telling me that it's very hard to start with Agile, but I was thinking that my team is different and everything's going to be great. But then starting, I realized that Agile doesn't fix your problems. It shines light on your problems. So since Agile is designed to make something deliverable every 2 weeks, it is designed to make teams faster. So that pushes more pressure on the system and reveals the leaky pipes in your system that need to be fixed. So I would like to talk about more specific challenges that my team faced and how in general we resolve them. We started Scrum in January, so it's been several months that we have this issue, and then we found solutions. So first, unclear individual roles. The development team is equal, so there is a flat hierarchy. There were often cases where we had to decide on the architecture of the problem, the architecture of a system, and the problem was that different people have different opinions. So which opinion would you take? There wasn't any IT manager. Another thing is that things can be vague, so we plan only for 2 weeks, so what happens next? Where does UX fit in? So we didn't see, in the Scrum methodology, we didn't see anywhere talking about UX. So where do we put the UX in a sprint? And also, is it 2 weeks enough time to design something? Probably not. How do we combine all of this? So let's talk about the solutions and the lesson learned from my team. First of all, since there is a flat hierarchy, then we weren't sure who has to decide on stuff. It was very tricky because we had senior developers that were suggesting solutions, and one was thinking that their solution is maintainable, whereas the other, their solution was more maintainable. So it was very hard to decide when we didn't have any IT lead. The solution we finally found is that we assigned feature owners. So there is a specific person who's owning a feature, and that means that even though there are discussion and technical discussion on a topic, then the final decision is up to this owner. So this made it clear for people since one person was responsible for the feature. Now another aspect is that things are vague and it's very hard to predict in general. So how do we do it? In this stage, we introduced another method from another Agile methodology, which is called Lean, and it's the notion of the minimum viable product. This is a notion that implies that we want to build something minimum, but still viable, so still useful for the users. So if we were building donuts, for example, this would be our minimum viable donut, and the one with sprinkles will be the final one. So what we want to achieve is that build something minimum, then release it and see the user's reaction, and then based on that we build our final product. So what we learned is that we need to be okay with shipping something that is not fully ready. And we also learned that doing nothing, it has an infinite distance from doing something, and something imperfection is barely noticeable. So perfect is really the enemy of done. Now, where does UX fit in this screen? Agile was made from developers by developers. So we realized that we cannot have an external UX person talking with the developers sometimes as a consultant. We need to have UX designers as part of the development team. That means that UX designers have more authority since they interact daily with the developers and can convince developers of UX in general. In general, it's very important that professionals show leadership. That means that in every case, in every opportunity, they explain why UX matters. It means to invite co-workers in usability tests to show how actually users are using the product. And at the same time, remind everybody the bigger picture and the context that the system is used. And another problem is that UX designers are under enormous pressure to design and test unrealistically fast. So how do we avoid design delays development? in our case, what worked is that UX design is at least one sprint ahead. So that means that if we are in sprint 2, the UX design team is doing designs for sprint 3, and then the developers are doing designs from sprint 1. Then if we're in sprint 3, what we designed in sprint 2, we are developing it, and then the designers are doing designs for the next sprint. So it's working in parallel, in fact. Now, I want to talk a bit more about how we organize in a sprint, and from the organization of the sprints, we can go to, in general, how we organize UX in a sprint. So before the sprint, we do user research. During the sprint, we do wireframes, and after the sprint, we're doing analysis. So I'll discuss a bit more about that. User research. Learning who are our users. I've seen this mistake quite a lot in professional context, that a project leader or the developers think they know who are the users, and they assume that they know their needs. Well, the thing is that we might look alike a lot, but our needs are not the same. We are not our users. So it's very important for us to actually go out and ask the users what they really need. And how do you find out what users want? So for that, I'll use an urban legend that we have about the yellow Walkman. Actually, how many of you know what a Walkman is? Okay. How many have used a Walkman? Okay, fine. So there is this urban legend that says that Sony wanted to find out whether people are interested in buying the yellow Walkman. So they found some users, they invited them to their office, and they asked them, would you use this yellow Walkman? And everybody was like, yeah, this is cool, I like it, it looks sporty, I would definitely buy it. And then the participants left the building, and by the exit of the building, they had two piles. One with black Walkmans and the other with yellow Walkmans. Guess which one every single participant took home, because they were free to take home a Walkman. It was the black one. Every single person chose the black one. That shows that we cannot ask people what they want. We have to observe them doing something. And what if you don't have a specific system? What if you are building your system right now? Well, you can always test stuff. See how they use an existing system that you want to replace. Or even see how they use a competitor system, because they have same needs from your competitors. Or, in general, ask them about specific problematic situations that happened in the past for them, because your project is here to resolve these situations. Now, how we build wireframes. Well, a wireframe is, in general, a sketch that shows more or less how a page would look like. Here is a wireframe of a profile. Now, we don't put any colors in there, we just create a wireframe just to have a brief overview of a website. At CERN, what I'm doing is I'm cutting things from wireframes and I'm asking users to rearrange them, because we're building author profiles, just to see what are the priorities for a user. That doesn't mean that we will use exactly the same order that they are showing, but it's more of a start point for more discussion on what we think is more important than something else. So again, this is another big mistake that I see. from professionals actually. So can I show these 3 designs to a user and ask them which one they prefer? What do you think? Which one do you prefer? How are you supposed to know unless you use it, right? You might say something and then while using it you will discover that you like something more. So this is the mistake I see often, that people ask users, which design do you prefer? Which design makes more sense to you? But how are the users supposed to know? It's the same trap as the yellow Walkman. So again, you can build a wireframe, just sketching, even with drawing in a paper, and then make it interactive. There are several tools to do it. There is InVision. You can also use a PowerPoint presentation, and if you click something on a wireframe, it leads to another page. You can even do a paper prototype a bit interactive. There are lots of ways of getting feedback before you start developing. It's very important to get feedback before we start developing because, as you know from development, a bug that is found much before the development is much less costly than a bug that is found during release. Usability bugs are no different. So what we have here is that if you find bugs that during the wireframe phase, you save a lot of time and effort later to fix bugs. And after the sprint, how my team is doing the analysis is in 3 stages. So if we want to release something, first we call it we eat our own dog food. Basically we test our own stuff. We gather the feedback, we fix bugs, and then we invite specific users from a diversity point of view to test specific features. Then we gather their feedback, but also usage data in the system, and when we feel more confident, then we share with everyone. And then again, we gather usage data.
One question.
Yeah?
Isn't it the principle of Scrum that you have customers the whole time with you? So why don't you test like at the very beginning already with customers?
Because so there are several issues in that. You have a customer every 2 weeks, so every sprint, basically, in the sprint review. So you can test with them, but also requirements change. So the customer can say in the beginning, it's the same thing as giving you a huge document with requirements, and when they start using it, you will realize something else or some edge case that they didn't think about before, so it's always very important. What I'm talking about here is Inspire is used by thousands of users around the world. You can have one user per category with you, but in real life you cannot have thousands of users giving you feedback constantly. So we need to test, to build something minimum, then test it with invitation, and then open it to everyone. So these are the challenges that my team has found and the solution that worked for us. And this is what we've built so far. It's still a work in progress. Right now we are in the phase where we invite specific users to test. This is the search interface I showed you before for papers. It looks much more modern, it has facets for filtering, and we are also investigating what our users want. So to sum up, what I learned from this experience is that it's very important that you try often. The first time you won't get it right, but it's very important to release it, gather user feedback, and try again incrementally, so that in the end you have something that users are happy and your project is also successful. Thank you. So are there any questions?
questions? Well, maybe I have one for you, starter. Well, actually, this morning with part of the audience, I mean, all the students, we had a workshop on agility and things. So we discussed some issues and stuff. And then this morning, we at some point, we discussed with some students the fact that, well, you're presenting the objective of making developers happier, which is fine, of course, and we hope that it works this way. Now, it can also bring more pressure, the fact that the way we plan the sprints, or if we have, well, it's known also that it can also raise a lot of pressure. I don't know whether it's more pressure in your case for the UX designers or more for the developers, but we see that we have these two communities that work hand in hand, in parallel, I mean. And so, my friend, how did you experiment on CERN how to do so that it doesn't put too big pressure on the developers, so that they are actually happy and alignment between, you know, the objective of each sprint and the fact it works. How does it work to manage the pressure?
So
or maybe there is no pressure at CERN, I don't know, for this project.
So putting pressure in a sprint, I think it's not sustainable if you put constant pressure to developers. We need to find an equilibrium. The way we are doing it is we have a sprint planning meeting in the beginning of each sprint. I have the requirements ordered by hierarchy, and then it's up to the developers to take requirements, some tasks and subtasks, and it's the developers who evaluate and estimate how long it will take. So it's not me who says in this sprint we're going to finish this big task. It's up to them to say that they estimate something really big, so then we discuss between ourselves and we say maybe we take out this portion so that everybody is happy, both the developers who estimate themselves
and in general this is enough so that they don't overestimate their possibilities.
So what happened often in our case is that the developers overestimate and underestimate. Yeah, and they say that we can do this in that sprint and then they deliver that. But over the course of the sprints, we discovered how much is our velocity. So this is how we do it.
Very good.
Other questions?
I have a question.
No one has a question.
So, thanks so much, Stella, for the presentation. Very interesting. I was wondering, and you touched on this very briefly during your talk. I was wondering if you could expand on this a little bit. How do you make sure that actually the UX team is actually listened for, is actually like a first world citizen in the larger group that is working on a project? Because most of the time, and this comes also from direct experience, there is this tendency, and also the problem that occur is that developers think that UXers are just like people that are very good at Photoshop, and that they don't do much else than just producing mocks of the UI. So how do you make sure that your colleagues that actually are in the development team understand your work and make sure they take into account your advices that go beyond just how the interface should look?
I have two different answers on this. First, we need to have support by the hierarchy. So it's very important that my manager understands that UX is important. And in that case, I'm the product manager, so I'm managing the whole project and I'm doing the prioritization. So in our case, it's very important because I know the value of UX, so I put UX first in everything we design. So from that aspect, we are very lucky to have a product manager who also understands UX. On the other aspect, we tried without UX before, and the developers have seen that it failed. the developers have spent months developing something and putting their effort in there, and finally we show it to the user and the user was unable to use it. So from experience we realized how important UX is, and developers are also very eager in having things that they develop and actually they are used by users and not waste their time in developing something that is useless. So I think it was very important for us that initially we failed to deliver something to the user, that the developers themselves saw the importance of UX.
Thank you.
We had another question?
Yep, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really interesting. I have a question about, you were talking about MVP, and after it you were talking about testing the product. So there's 3 stages of testing, and you are testing MVP on each stage, or each just MVP only for first and second stage?
We test the MVP for all stages.
For all stages.
Yeah. In that case, what we want to release is actually release the MVP first.
Okay.
So we are testing with everything. We are here now in this phase, and when we open the public beta, it will be a public beta MVP.
Okay, can you go to the framework, Scrum framework slide? And my question is, can you tell us a little bit more of which are the outputs of a UX designer that are put into the product backlog, for instance? What are the actually output that you give to begin with the Scrum? Is it a document? Is it, how do you describe then the behavior of the interaction you create?
So in a sprint, the tasks are based on user stories. So user story is a task that is described as a user, I want to blah in order to blah. So basically we take this story, for example, as a user I want to log in a system so that I see my account, for example. Then we say that this is a priority. We take this user story and we analyze it more. Like we want an interface that does that, we want some interaction between the screens and so on. So based on what comes up from the user story, then the work for the UX designer would be to create a wireframe or get user needs or do a more interactive prototype or high fidelity mock-up, etc. So it depends on where we are with the project. But basically, we take the tasks and then we define whether UX is needed for the task or only development or only testing. And the tasks come also from the sprint review. So we show it to users and they say we need to be able to do something extra. So what comes from the sprint review, we put it back in the sprint backlog that we have. Yes?
Regarding the Inspire project, you say that you started like a few months ago already and that it's still a work in progress. So I'm not really understanding, so you say you're doing the sprints, and I want to know, like, is there a maximum number of sprints you can do, or how does it work completely? And when do you know that you reach kind of the final output?
So that's a question we also ask ourselves. So Inspire, now users are using it, and it looks like that. So these 50,000 users are using daily. What we want to achieve is to make them switch and use that instead. We have a project timeline of several years in the making, but we need to understand what's important for the users also. There is no maximum number of sprints, as long as the budget allows, of course. But what's important for us, and we are now investigating, is where it is good enough that we can switch it off and switch on this again. So this is a question we are now investigating actually, by showing it to users, and when we open the make it publicly available when we understand how much percentage. We are planning on putting both platforms in parallel, and then we will see whether lots of users are going to this platform instead and trying to convince all users to go to this platform instead. So this is where we will decide that actually this is good enough and we can move on. Yeah?
So you said don't ask the users what they want, but rather observe them. But what happens if sometimes we can't observe them? Like, what do you suggest other than that? We should just ask them and trust what they say, or
No.
another?
Yeah. If you, it's important to ask the right questions. So instead of asking, what do you want? Try asking, what did you do to resolve this problem? For example, your system will solve a problem. How did you resolve it yesterday? For example, you can ask them like that. So you observe their actions, but not with seeing, but with hearing the steps they took, for example. And you will have been trained to understand that there are some inefficiency that you can improve with your system. It's very important, if you have a small wireframe to show them, it's already good for starting a discussion.
Stella, would you consider personas for that?
Yeah, of course. Personas are very important.
In case you cannot reach your user, but in your case you can, so...
Yeah, the personas need to also be backed up by information that you have. So not only what you imagine this persona would look like, do, but actually test with the real person. But then personas are very useful to also convince the developers that this persona would do it that way because they understand more about it. Yeah.
You said it was like difficult to apply the system at the first place because everyone on the team had like the same responsibility. But what was like the criteria you choose to know who's going to take this decision? Or
So who would be the feature owner, you mean? Yeah, that was really tough, but in our team there are particularly some people very interested in front-end, some other in some specific back-end feature. So we had a discussion between ourselves and we decided to split the task, and they agreed on who is taking what. It's very important that you let the other take something as long as you feel ownership of what you take. So yeah.
and wasn't it a bit difficult like to put everything together? There must have been like one person to take the decision at the end, right? You took like the final decision together.
Yeah, we took the final decision together. Since we don't have an IT lead who will say you're doing this or you're doing that. Any more questions?
Is the method, the agility or Scrum, has been used for other projects at CERN? And what are the main barriers when trying to implement this method?
Yes, Scrum has been used in other projects at CERN, and CERN is now trying to push more and more for agility because of the advantages we discussed before. The issues I see with other teams are mainly communication issues. So how the developers communicate or how you communicate with different teams in other departments. How do you also... Velocity is another issue because at CERN we have a quite high turnover of people. People have usually short contracts, like 2 years, and then they have to leave. So it's very hard for someone new to start again, and the team is quite unstable, so we cannot estimate exactly how fast the project would go.
How do you express user requirements formally? Do you use OCL or something else?
Well, we use Jira and create user stories. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We use Jira to prioritize the tasks. we write user stories with the official format with this as a user I want to blah in order to do that. And yeah, but before that, in order to organize in general the work, I sit with people and I type everything they say in a Google Doc, and then I put color coding. If they say something interesting, for example, I use green, and then I go back to my notes and I create the user stories based on the color coding in my notes. Any more questions?